And I'm going to share my screen. Let's see what we got. All right, can we all see that? It should say nature awareness. Sweet. Alrighty, so I'm Kirsten. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I've been with adventure programs for over 4 years. I'm actually a sort of recent now, graduate. Um, I would like to start off by acknowledging that we are fortunate to be able to study and work on the unceded traditional and ancestral territory of the Chumash people. Much of the knowledge that I share in these workshops comes from traditional ecological knowledge preserved and passed down through thousands of years by Indigenous peoples. I hope that this presentation can do justice to that tradition of sharing knowledge about how to live off and protect the land, while also acknowledging that the past and present original inhabitants of this land have been irrevocably harmed. I realize that these are just words, but I do hope that these words can create awareness and be a step towards future change. I want to thank everybody for attending this first workshop of the quarter. I think only one of you I recognize the name of who's attended two now, who's attended past workshops. So thanks for returning and thanks for all the new people, all the new faces. Today's workshop is called Seaside Foraging. The purpose of this workshop is to open up a whole new perspective on foraging for food. It will provide advice on sustainable ocean foraging, information on what plants on the beach are edible and how to identify them, and how to follow local rules and regulations for collection, as well as some other things. I wrote an article on this topic for the Isla Vista Ethnobotany project, and by the end of the quarter, actually, you'll be able to check that out on our brand new website. I pretty much only touch on seaweeds in this presentation because I work for an ethnobotany site and I really like plants, but also because I think that most people kind of already know that fish and shellfish exist and that you can eat those, and that most people don't realize that there's actually like edible plants in the ocean as well. Please feel free to type any questions, comments, or concerns into the chat, or if I invite you to turn your mic on, you are totally welcome to do that as well. All right, so this is one of those instances that I would like you to just quickly participate, throw it in the chat, or turn your mic on. What do you want to take away from today's workshop? Or if you don't have any takeaways, maybe why did you sign up for the workshop, or do you have any questions before I get started? Please feel free to speak or type in the chat. Thanks. Oop. All right, so somebody's saying it'd be fun to spread the knowledge and that the topic's interesting. Thank you. Someone wants to learn about seafood foraging. That makes sense. That's a good reason to sign up for this presentation. Gain some knowledge. Want to learn what to eat and how to prepare it to expand your diet and connect with the land. I like that. That's a really good one. Someone wants to learn about seaweed and what he can eat for free. Sea vegetables. That's it. Yep. Alexa's also with adventure programs and wants to help share on Instagram for anyone who can attend. Great. Thank you very much. I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything, but I'm going to keep going. So thanks for sharing, everybody. So this is kind of how my article starts, and I just kind of read it. Have you ever walked along the beach and been amazed by the amount of washed up seaweeds that you have to pick your way through to even get to the water? Or maybe you've tried to go swimming out there, but 4 feet of dense sea plants that you have to wade waist deep through before you can get past the break. But there are 4 feet of dense sea plants, excuse me. Thankfully, I've got a solution for all of you. You can just eat your way through it and make a path all the way to the water. Just kidding. I don't really recommend eating really dead seaweed, but most sea plants actually are edible. And you could technically eat it if you really wanted to. Some are pretty tasty, but as I said, we don't advise eating super nasty, like rotting seaweed. What are seaweeds? The word seaweed is a social construct. No, really. It is a common name for macroscopic, primitive plant like organisms that grow in the ocean. They have no single common ancestor, but they do all fall under the algae family, coming from three different phyla that are commonly known as green, brown, and red algae, some of which can be found in freshwater, saltwater, and on land. For the most part, algae are photosynthetic or otherwise autotrophic and account for the vast majority of primary productivity on the planet. So most of the energy our planet has on it that isn't from the sun, or it's from the sun, but it's used to create usable energy. So although algae are in the plant family, which is called Plantae, they aren't technically plants because they are much similar in structure and therefore don't have roots or true stems or leaves. Without these structures, they use all of their tissues to absorb water and sunlight and nutrients directly from the water. They're very diverse, from single-celled to many meters long, and can be found in the harshest of environments. Oh, let's see. Although ocean foraging may be new to you, it has many thousands of years of history, stretching far beyond the arrival of the Spanish and other Europeans. Not only that, but the tradition and heritage still exists today as part of many coastal indigenous traditions. Unfortunately, the commercial seaweed industry doesn't take into account that oceans and shorelines they are ravaging for profit also belong to the indigenous harvesters. Additionally, many of these peoples have been forcefully relocated to lands that are not historically their own or that do not intersect with the coast. And so most state regulations related to marine harvest actually negatively affect the native people's abilities to harvest, even though they're not the ones that are actually like depleting the resources. Some traditional foods harvested by indigenous people include abalone, the shells of which are used in traditional dress and as tradable jewelry. Mussels are also a popular treat for past and present indigenous peoples. And there's actually archaeological records dating back over 10,000 years, indicating that humans have been eating mussels on the coast of California for a very long time. Please remember that when you forage on the shoreline, you are becoming a part of a tradition that goes back beyond your roots. Make sure to be respectful and grateful. So, reasons to eat seaweeds. Sea vegetables are typically pretty high in protein and also contain vitamin B12, potassium, iodine, and omega-3 fatty acids. They also provide natural MSG or glutamates for a savory umami addition to dishes like soups, sauces, breads, cakes, or potato chips. They are considered good for the thyroid and are antioxidants and detoxifiers, or have antioxidants and are detoxifiers. Some seaweeds can be eaten raw for up to 10 days if refrigerated properly. Some can be steamed, dried, marinated, fried, boiled, but only for a couple of seconds, or pickled, or any combination of the above. Most actually turn a really bright green when they're cooked. Seaweeds are highly perishable, so keep that in mind. And make sure you cut them fresh from the ocean and store them properly or eat them fresh, because the long dead seaweeds can be like pretty nasty. There are harvesting regulations for foraging sea vegetables. In California, for example, you can forage all year for up to 10 pounds per day per person for personal use, although there might be more restrictive local restrictions. A license is needed in California for commercial harvesting. In Washington, you must have a permit, and in Oregon, you can only forage when seaweeds are in season, kind of like hunting. There are also some species of seaweeds that are illegal to harvest or that have regulations. Plants like eelgrass and surfgrass are very important for marine habitats and are therefore protected. Sea palm, on the other hand, is regulated. Apparently, only commercial licenses or people with commercial licenses can actually harvest this, and then only in small quantities because it's actually a very desirable one. There are also some places that are like marine protected areas where you can't forage or fish or anything like that at all. There are potential hazards that can arise for seaside foragers. Thankfully, there are no deadly sea vegetables, although there are some like acid kelp, also known as witch's hair, which can make you kind of sick. This secretes sulfuric acid when damaged and actually bleaches the models surrounding seaweeds. So we ask that you make sure to do your research to confirm with an expert before eating what you forage. That being said, there are other potential hazards you can encounter, obviously. Whenever you go to the beach, you should always keep an eye out for big waves that can slam you into rocks or drag you into the water. Um, you know, Never turn your back on the ocean. And also, bad weather and high winds can be potentially dangerous if you're not prepared for it. Additionally, although seaweeds have many properties to them that are considered very healthy for humans, there are actually a lot of red flags. Oh no, not a lot of red flags, but there are some red flags that appear for some people when they're looking at the contents of seaweeds. I don't even know how to say this one. Carrageenan? I don't know. That's one of the many things found in seaweed and actually has been known to cause inflammation, tumors, and other intestinal issues when introduced to lab animals in very large doses. That being said, don't run away yet. The average person eating a normal diet or even a high seaweed diet is not going to be intaking anywhere near enough seaweed to get sick or be in the high dosages of this chemical to harm them. Also to be noted, this chemical has been approved and reapproved multiple times by the FDA for use in organic products. So it's not like super out there. The foraging rules for ethics and sustainability. When you forage and harvest your own food, you know where it comes from and how it is treated. So you're actually already kind of on the right track for ethics and sustainability. But to forage sea vegetables ethically and sustainably, there are some generally accepted rules. Only harvest the leaf-like blades, leave the roots or the holdfasts where the algae clings to the substrate so that it can keep surviving and producing. Additionally, just like with any plant, only take what you're going to eat that day and leave enough for the next day and years to come. The spring and summer are the best times to harvest seaweeds because at that time they're actually actively growing up to 2 feet per day, but you can technically forage for them year round. The best time of day for seaweeds is at low tide, uh, mostly because the seaweeds are available or more easily accessible to humans. Um, and the lower the tides, the more seaweeds you'll find. For the most part, to properly forage, you're going to want a good pair of scissors and maybe a bag or cooler to store the seaweeds in, and then also clothes and grippy shoes that you can get wet and sandy. Being prepared. I also teach leave no trace classes, and being prepared for any kind of eventuality in the situation you're in is like often one of the best ways to lead a sustainable lifestyle. Finally, make sure you have a positive identification of the seaweed before you eat it. This will ensure that you aren't eating something that can be dangerous for your health or something that is protected by the state or county or country, excuse me. All right, possibly now the part you've all been waiting for, the actual seaweeds themselves. We Americans would probably be surprised to learn how much seaweed we actually eat or use on a weekly basis. Sushi rolls and miso soup only scratch the surface. Some papers, cosmetics, processed foods, and toothpaste often have vegan thickeners like agar, carrageenan, and alginate that come from seaweeds. As seaweed becomes...
Carrageenan.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, it's carrageenan.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Carrageenan. Um, As seaweed becomes a trendy new thing in the US, restaurants are exploring the world of this low-calorie superfood, creating interesting new concoctions, including cocktails and liqueurs. Scientists are also looking for other ways to use seaweeds, like 3D printing, fun fact, biofuel, tick vaccines, drugs, furniture, and so much more. California is lucky to have over 800 known species of marine algae, but I only have a selection of 13, thankfully, otherwise you'd be here for the next 4 days. 13 edible ones in this presentation. Identification of many seaweeds can be pretty complicated because they change due to a lot of factors, like age, size, tidal location, geographic location, reproductive stage, etc. So even for experienced people, it can be kind of difficult to identify seaweeds. So just keep that in mind. Please only eat seaweeds that you can actually identify like positively. You're positive this is the plant, or that somebody who has a lot of experience with identifying seaweeds has told you. All right. I do know that we have participants from all over the place, all over the states, and at least one person from another country. And so I was thinking, if you recognize any of these seaweeds, type in the chat where you've seen it from. All right. I don't know if anyone like has that much experience with seaweeds, but I think that'd be really cool. All right. And most of these, well, they're all off the coast of California, and possibly most of them are only off the coast of California, but doesn't hurt to ask. All right, so this first one, Nori, also known as laver, is a lacy purple or red annual intertidal to upper subtidal red alga found on rocks, man-made structures, and other algae between Alaska and Mexico. So you're gonna see it all over the place. Um, this is actually one of, if not the most popular edible seaweed in the world. And it's primarily used for wrapping sushi, also found in crispy seaweed sheets that you can buy at the grocery store. It has a kind of a nutty flavor when dried. Oh, Edward has some seaweed in his hand. I don't know if you guys can see him in the video. Thank you, Edward. This is a superfood with a huge list of vitamins and minerals that make it extremely healthy. Calcium, choline, copper, folate, iron. I don't know. There's like 50 things on this list. It's pretty impressive. But due to all these essential and unique proponents, the seaweed is thought to be good for thyroid health, digestive ailments, and also serves as an anti-cancer and antiviral. So it's a cool one. One of my favorite seaweeds, purely because I've known about it since I was very small, is giant kelp. You'll probably remember learning about giant kelp in your primary school classes, or maybe you've gone kayaking or surfing and gotten tangled up in it. You can actually like make a whistle from like the little bladders attached to the ends of the kelp, which is kind of, or the attachment ends of the kelp, which is kind of cool. And it's actually one of the very few very easily identifiable seaweeds. Interestingly, this algae can be found near shores and temperate seas all over the world, including all up and down the western coast of the United States. In California, it's most abundant south of San Francisco and can usually be found pretty deep in 20 to 100 plus feet of water, although you also see it all over the shores, especially in like Isla Vista. That's one of the most common ones. It grows very quickly, up to several feet per day. This kind of kelp is high in glutamic acid, which is MSG, or MSG equivalent, and good for sea salt and sugar, some kind of sugar in it. I don't know. It's very sustainable because of how quickly it grows. So if you are looking for sustainable food sources, that's a cool one. Someone just asked. Yeah, so Lindsay, it is all over the beaches in IV. There are a couple different kinds of species. And I can't promise you the exact one you're talking about is this, but it is all over the beaches in Isla Vista. I see it all the time. And if you ever go kayaking or free diving, snorkeling, scuba diving off the coast, Channel Islands as well, you see it like growing for real, not just floating around. I wouldn't eat it off the beaches though, okay? How do you prep this one? You can lay it out in the sun to let it dry until a fine powder forms on the surface of this kelp. And if you eat it dry, you can also use it to preserve raw fish, like use the salts in it, which is kind of cool. Bladder Rack, this oddly named perennial brown alga, even though it's green, it is technically in the brown alga category, is native to the west coast of North America, all the way from Alaska to our very own Santa Barbara County. So it's probably about as far as you're going to see it south. You'll find it in intertidal areas attached to rocks and mussel shells. The description of it was kind of like it looks like flat antlers, and I kind of like that description. It kind of does look like that. This one can be used for meat seasoning and as a thickener for sauces. It's also high in iodine and iron. Kombu. This is a perennial kelp found on rocks in low intertidal and subtidal zones from Alaska to Mexico. Kind of got an interesting shape. This is the traditional base for Japanese broth called dashi, and is used to flavor beans and chicken soup. Dried kombu can actually last up to 10 years and is considered best at least aged 2 to 3 years because the flavor becomes more mild. The bladder chain kelp or sea fern is native between Oregon and Mexico. I don't have too much information on that one, but it is an edible seaweed. Sea lettuce is found from Alaska to Mexico on pretty much any surface. Apparently, it can form on like living creatures, so that's cool. It's actually one of the lesser known, more delicate green sea vegetables, and it can be used in soups and salads. This does not pickle easily because it's too fragile, so you'd probably eat this one raw. Bull kelp or bullwhip kelp, which I actually just saw, 2 days ago? I was in Monterey, and there was like, they stretched 50 feet down the beach, absolutely massive. This one is an annual algae found on the Pacific coast of North America and Asia. Bull kelp lives between Alaska and Point Conception, which is a little bit north of Santa Barbara County area, and is actually the dominant kelp north of Santa Cruz. So I think giant kelp was the dominant plant, like kind of south of San Francisco, if I remember correctly. This one also goes pretty deep, 13 to 72 feet. That's because it's so long. And it looks kind of like a whip with a long ball at the end. And this one, apparently you can pickle if someone's interested on prep. All right, the grape stone, also known as Turkish washcloth or towel, is one of those seaweeds that is a little bit more difficult to identify, as it can be anywhere from red to brown, smooth and translucent, or covered in tiny spikes. This one's got like little bumps on it. This one's from British Columbia all the way to Slough, so again, a little bit further north, and it's perennial. You can boil this one in water, keep the liquid, and use that liquid to thicken soups and sauces. Wakame, or sea mustard, there's actually 2 species of seaweed that go by the same common name. So as you can see, we've got 2 different, lookings, and then also the names are different. The wakame is the name of a species of sea vegetable that is used in seaweed salads in Asia, as well as a similar looking and tasting species that we actually have in California. The Asian species is very invasive in California and is farmed in some places to be served in soups and other recipes that go well with its subtle sweetness and slipperiness. Wakame is an opportunistic seaweed found on pretty much any substrate in low intertidal and shallow areas from Alaska to Slough. It can grow up to 9 feet in length and form a thick canopy. The non-native species does like disturbed areas, so anywhere that like boats are going to be active. It can grow in really high densities. This one's sea cabbage, also known as sweet kombu. So we have something just called normal kombu. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe somebody thought they looked similar. But this is found in many parts of the world, including the coast of California. Featherweight kelp, I think, is really visually unappealing, kind of like a slimy costume accessory from the deep. But this, like the leafy blades as well as the hollow bladders that you can see on here, those parts are edible. Apparently the bladders can be like little olive substitutes, which is kind of interesting, but they pop. I did read somewhere you don't really want to eat the really tough like spine of that plant. And my final seaweed I have for you today is the sea palm, which actually cannot be harvested recreationally. You can only do it with a commercial license because it's very desirable. So keep that in mind, don't get in trouble. But it's really cool looking, I think. So I shared it. We got 5 more minutes, so I didn't really have much for other kinds of snacks, but there are obviously fish, eels, bivalves, crustaceans, mollusks, and many other things that people can harvest. Oh, sorry, I just saw Leilani's. I don't know why it's desirable. My guess is it's pretty tasty. Um, but yeah, if you do decide to look into other kinds of like non-plant creatures to like shellfish and such, make sure you confirm that it's not the time of year where there's like biotoxins in the water, like toxic algae blooms that can actually be really dangerous, deadly to humans. There's actually a hotline you can call to check, like, hey, are the toxic algae blooms happening? Can I see seafood harvest? But that's for like animals, not plants. Sweet. My next workshop is Tuesday, January 19th at 8 p.m. It's on the benefits of native and drought resistant gardening. I want to thank you all so much for coming here. If you want me to send the recording of this or the slides or something, send me your email. If you have any questions, I'm here for, I'll be in another 10 minutes, whatever. If you want to just chat, anything you want, I'm here for you. Thanks so much for everyone. Oh, here's a question.
Thank you.
And I'm going to stop sharing. One sec. How do I do that? And